So this is the same setup that we used in our previous video. Alright, so this time let's quickly set the root motion view to this animation tree. By the way, this is an optional node for sure. And in the animation tree, I have a blend tree in which I have two nodes, basically the animation node and the output node. So if you select the animation node, and if you want to get the documentation of this node, well, you can just select any of the node that you want the document for, and in the inspector you can see the actual name of the node is like animation node animation, and you can just quickly get the docs by pressing F1 and search the same name for the node, and that's animation node animation, and you will get all the documentation for this node. Alright, so you can just go through the document if you want have an in-depth knowledge, but I'll be just going on the overview for sure, because there are a lot of options to mess with, and all these options I actually explained in my previous video, and all these options are basically to set using code. So let's quickly add a script to the animation tree. So well, this is just a basic script again, and in this script let's write a basic code. And here the code is like, we just get the animation named node. Well, here the tree root basically states the complete tree root, so it's same as the C nodes. Like again, this is a tree structure, so even the animation tree, again the name itself says tree, so all the nodes will be in a tree structure. So we basically get the tree root, and then we get the node that's named with the animation. So make sure you spell the name correctly. So if I just change it to, let's say, idle, then we get the idle node, and this actually returns a copy of the animation node animation, and that's completely this stuff. Alright, so in that I just say I need to change the timeline length. So basically my current timeline is set to 2 seconds, so we just change it to 5 seconds using the code, and you can see the animation plays much slower. Alright, so I'll be using the ready function to demonstrate most of the stuff, but this is the main actual code. Alright, so let's quickly add a camera node, and let me place it here. By the way, I just love the Godot version 4.4 because everything is a lot cool. Alright, so let's run the scene, and yeah, here you can see the actual animation is playing. I mean, the timeline is set to 5 seconds, and this is the 1 second timeline. Alright, so let's see what else can we do with the animation node. So if you go inside the dock, then let's say we set the play mode. Alright, so the setup value is like, we can set the play mode to be forward or backward, and I don't think this is gonna work because of the idle animation. So let's change this to something different. Let's say invert slash. Alright, so we will just set it to play in a reverse direction. So for that we just basically use the play mode. So let's again see, yeah, so we can just use the play mode forward to backward, and you can actually see it plays backward. Alright, so to set this the option is like play mode, and here the setter value, so actually it's this, and let's say play mode to be animation.animation, and then the play mode. Alright, so let's quickly test it out. and you can see this slash is actually going in a reverse direction. And by this, you can actually set all the different kinds of properties that I actually explained in my previous video. Like you can set the loop mode, you can set the offset, time scale, time length, and you can even change the animation, because you have the property to set and get the animation. And I mean, like, this short explanation will be a lot, because you can actually get any node and you can actually play with that. Alright, so let's move on to the second node, and that's Oneshot. Well, let's even rename this node to OS. And again, I just have two different kind of animations for sure. And let's jump back to the script. So here actually you can use this reference node. So basically you can just get the reference node, and you can actually change its property. But for this Oneshot, there is a simpler way to actually fire all these options. And how do we do that? Well, basically we just use the set function, and in the parameters we just say the OS request to fire. So basically we just say this request, Oneshot request to fire, and OS basically means the name of this node. And how you can actually get these parameters? Well, you can just select the animation tree, and here in the parameters you can see the direct set values are listed out here. So you can just set it to active, or you can just check if it's active or not. And for the request, you can set it to fire abort or fade out. And for the documentation, as I said earlier, that you just need to select any of the node, and you get the name of the node over here, and you can just quickly say animation node Oneshot, and you get the complete documentation for the node. Alright, so you can even see here we have the direct setter and getter values, so you need not to have a reference, and you can just directly set. And other than that, I just quickly added the word environment and directional light so that we can see the actual screen. And yes, you can see the Oneshot node is fired after a wait time of 2 seconds. Then we just fire the Oneshot node, and you can use the same values to even have let's say fade out, I guess. Yes, fade out. So this basically fade out these options, so it basically triggers this option. And you have this abort option, and also in the documentation you can see we can set the fade in curve, fade in time, fade out curve, fade out time. But for these parameters to set, you actually need to create a reference of that node, and then you can actually set those values. But for a quick fire, you can just use the set function with the parameters. So the last point is, like, you cannot actually edit filters either using this documentation or using this set value. I think you need to manually set all these filters for your animation tree. You just cannot use these filters. And other than this, you can do anything what you want using the code. Okay, so the next node we have is this add 2D. Right, so the first thing we need to do is to get the documentation. And I probably think, like, you always need to see the documentation for any of the nodes to have a better understanding. And I think there is no much description, but you can basically just change this slider value. There is no other options other than sync. And if you select the animation tree in the parameters, you can see we have the direct set option. So I think, yeah, so you can just see we can set the add amount value, and this time the value is gonna be float, so floating point value, and from 0 to 1. Make sure you don't set it to beyond 1 else you'll just go through a glitch that we saw in my previous video. And yes, you can see the add value is actually working. So this is how you set the add to. And let's use I think add 3. For this add 3, let's see what we have in the documentation. And again, there is no much documentation for this because there is just a slider that we can control, and it's basically from ranging -1 to +1. Nothing is more changed, and it's just the same as add 2, but for this range you can specify any value from -1 to +1. And you can actually see the animation node starts to play. Alright, so the next node we have is this blend 2D, and I think let's just skip the nodes for blend 2D and blend 3D because there is nothing much to explain other than this slider. And so as I said that there is no option to set these bones using code, so you need to change it manually. And other than that, I think again the documentation is not gonna be much. So animation node blend 2D, and yeah, so it's just basically setting these values, I mean this slider value. And I think the same goes for blend 3D. And yes, you can just set the value range from -1 to +1 and nothing more. The next option again we have is subtract, and even in subtract it's the same thing. Alright, so the next node we have is time seek, and if you select the node, we have a new option. Well, there was no option in Godot version 4.3, but as you know, I changed the version, I mean I upgraded the version, and we just got a new option. And I just never tried what does this option do, but I think this option actually works between this in and out. So basically in Godot 4.4 you can create a in marker and a out marker for any of the animation, and if you want to play the animation between those markers rather than playing the complete animation, I think this is used for that. Well, I just never tried it out, but if you have tried, then make sure you comment it. For this documentation, it's again quite simple. Let's say time seek, and yes, so this thing just added up, and you can just get the time seek request. You can set the time seek request from here, so you can just basically use this set to set this time seek. The next node we have is time scale, and again there is nothing much other than a slider, and even in the documentation you know how to set the time scale slider. But let's quickly use this. Let's just say set time scale, and let's set it for an example, let's say 2.2, and let's run. Alright, so you can see the time scale, it's going a lot faster. And why is that? Well, in the documentation, okay, so basically I just forgot to tell that initially the time scale is set to 1.0, so basically it plays in a normal way, and then it waits for 2 seconds, and then the time scale is set to 2, so that's why it's actually playing the animation much faster. Alright, so the next node we have is this transition and this is quite interesting. Well, in my previous video I said that how you can get these input values, so basically you just add some elements, and for the documentation of this node, well, it has a couple of options, so basically you can just set all these options, and also you can just turn on these options from here. But let's see how to set this transition, and that's what I actually use the most. Well, if you select the animation tree and in the parameters, you can see we can directly set using the setter function rather than getting the node. But to have more control, you can just get the node. Alright, so let's say the transition request. So basically this is the transition request, and we need to set its value to, let's say, anim1. So initially the animation1, this point will be triggered, so basically like this animation1 will be triggered, and we have other options. So what are those? Well, this current index and current states are getter values, so you cannot actually set them, but you can get these values, so it's useful for printing. Let's say we get the current state, and also the current index and current state. Let's set it to animation 2, and then I think this is not needed. Alright, so initially the animation 1 is set, so the print statement like current index will be 0, because the indexing starts from 0 1 2, so the current index will be 0 because initially the animation 1 is set, and the current state will be animation 1. Then we set it to animation 2. So again, I just said the transition request is a setter value, and then we just print the same stuff. So initially it will be like 0, anim1, 1, and then anim2, I guess, and 0, anim1, again 0, and then anim1. So what's going on? We actually set the transition request to anim2, but why didn't it change? I think we need to add a wait, because the transition takes some time, but this code runs instantly. So let's create a timer of 2 seconds, and then after timeout, so basically means after a successful transition, we print the other stuff. So I think it should work fine now, and you can see, yes, it's working. So that's it for this transition. So the next node we have is BlendTree, and I just created a quick setup where I just added a BlendTree, and if you remember that, again, this complete area is a BlendTree, and inside a BlendTree, again, I just nested one more BlendTree, and inside that I have a animation and just an idle animation that's connected to the output. Well, now let's see the properties of this BlendTree, and you see there is nothing much in the inspector, but if we see the documentation for this, then you'll see there is a lot of stuff going on for sure. And yes, there are a few methods. So what are these methods? Well, basically you can control the BlendTree complete graph using the documentation. So for an example that you want to add any node in a runtime rather than manually setting it up, so you can do that using the BlendTree. So basically you just add a node at the beginning, and then you connect the node, and then you just call the nodes function and something like that. But yeah, so you can have n number of BlendTree nested. And for now, let's quickly see, you know, let's say for an example that one shot. And yeah, so now let's quickly see how to trigger this one shot inside a nested blend tree. Well, till now we just saw that we can just directly set a few parameters like this, but this time again, if you select the animation tree, you can see we can actually set the parameters because it's already visible in the blend tree option. So let's see if there is, yeah, so you can directly set like this. But let's say for an example that you need to get the parameters of this. So how do you actually do? So yes, from my previous example we learned that we can get any node a reference using the get node. But again, this time how to get the inside node of a blend tree? For that we can again use this same function. So this time if we want to get this animation node, so I'll just call this name as idle, and let's get the idle node. So basically first we get the reference of this node, and then inside that we get the reference by using this get node. All right, so now let's quickly print, but before actually let's confirm the call method. So it's animation node animation, and if you want to get maybe the play mode, then the value is like, sorry, it's over here, get play mode, and yes, the name is correct. All right, so let's test this out, and you can see the play mode, it prints as 0 because play mode actually, if it's forward then it prints 0, if it's backward then 1. So basically you can get any values inside a nested blend tree, and almost the same goes for any node. If you have like some other nodes, then you'll just use this get node options. Okay, so now let's quickly add few of the nodes, or let's try to add any node using this code. However, you will not be using this options to create nodes manually, but let's quickly see an example of that. All right, so I just created a simple example now. So in this, what we basically do is we create a animation node, and then we set the node's animation to be reloading. Then we connect the output of this node to the one shot, and then we just fire the one shot node. So these steps we will be actually creating using script. So this is just a basic script. Again, I just changed a little bit over here. So we just in the beginning we get the behavior, I mean blend tree, not behavior, and then we create a new node using this animation node animation.new. So we basically create a new node, we set its animation to reloading animation. So if you have seen again the documentation for this, then you can see we can actually set the animation. So we have the getter value to get the animation, and then we have the setter value. Either we can use set animation function, or we can just directly assign the animation name. So this is the actual name, like I'll be assigning this name. All right, and then we add the node to our blend tree. So we just call the BlendTree Node, and then the add function, and inside this function we add our blend tree and rename it to reload. So basically we just add like this, and then we rename it to be reload. We do something like this till here, and then we connect our nodes. So basically the connect node function by the way, this add node and this connect node functions are listed in this documentation. So you can see we can add a node using the name, the node, and then the position, and you can also connect the node, like we have the input node, input index, and then the output node. So the input node that we want to connect is like we need to connect to this node at the position 1. So this is basically the slot. If you prefer to set it to in, then you can just specify the position 0, but I need to connect this node to short, so that's why I specify 1, and then the name of the node, the name of the output node, and that's basically this reload, and this basically connects the node to this point. And then we just trigger this Oneshot node to see actually how it works. And before that, we create a timer to see the live changes after 2 seconds. Alright, so let's run the scene. And now you can see for 2 seconds it plays idle animation, and then it switches to reload animation. Even though we don't have any animation node, but still we just connected the node using this code. And if you think like where exactly we need these options, well, these are optional, because most of the time I just use these graphs rather than doing this stuff. But you can use this if you have some dynamic behavior for your runtime. So you want some more dynamic changes, or you need to change the graph while playing the game, or more complex logics, then for sure you can use this. Okay, so before actually switching to the next node, let's say you want to add any node that actually has filters. But as I said previously that using code you cannot actually turn on these bone filters. So what to do at that point? Well, basically you can just create a node, then use these edit filters, and then you can save it as a resource file, and then you can actually you can actually load the node using code, and then you can just connect the outputs and inputs. So basically that will contain these data. So you can do it that way around, and that's it for the BlendTree. So let's see the next node. So our next node is blend space 1D, and if you see the documentation for that, you can actually control the complete blend space 1D using the again same functions similar to BlendTree, where you can actually add blend points, get blend points, and you can remove and do a lot of stuff. And I don't think so like I'll be going through all this stuff, because if you read the documentation you can actually have a better understanding. And the only thing you can directly set the property in the inspector is like you can directly set the blend position. So basically this value how you want your transition. So basically like 0 means it's gonna play one animation, and then -1 it's gonna play another animation, and then +1 it's gonna play the next animation. So basically you can control this using directly the setter function. So basically like 1, and then let's wait for two seconds, and then let's play the left animation. So basically we just play the right animation, and we wait for 2 seconds, and then we play the left animation. And yes, it's very simple. So you can see how you can actually control the values. You can even use the lerp, or some different transition values where you can have easing functions. So rather than directly setting the hard-coded values, you can actually lerp these points, and all the other functions are very simple. So even the next node is blend space 2D, and that's again the exact same as blend space 1D. That only has the difference only we have is like in blend space 2D we have this y direction. So if you want to set the position, then rather than setting an integer, you need to pass a vector 2 and nothing more. So you just specify the location of the x-axis and y-axis, and all the other stuff are same. So you know, again I'm just going on the same thing again and again, but I always suggest you that go through the documentation for better understanding. Alright, so the last node we have now is the state machine. So now we have the actual state machine, basically few examples, not much. And let's select the animation tree, and then we just set the tree root as a state machine, and inside that you can actually draw any state how you wish. You can, you know, actually have some nested blend tree, or you can have some nested state machines. And for the demonstration I have a blend tree that actually has two animations and one shot and a state machine again, and make sure it's not connected to the end. So if you have nested state machines, then you can actually connect to end to have the complete transitions. Alright, so actually here we have some objects, not exactly objects but similar to objects, and that is these states. So basically this is an animation, you can see its property, and this is a blend tree, and this is the state machine. So other than this we have these diagonal arrow. So if you actually select the transition, then you can see we have a couple of options. So these are options we have discussed earlier, and the only thing that I didn't discuss is these options, so the priority and all the other stuff. So to demonstrate the priority, basically I'll be opening this nested state machine. So in this you can see we have, you know, two transitions. So basically from start to this idle, or from start to this outward slash and then go to idle. Well, let's select any of the transition and set its priority to 0. So this transition priority is 0 and the priority for this is 1. Alright, so if we play, and yes, if we play here, then you can see this animation is played. So let's again see, you know, this animation is played because the priority for this transition is set to 0. And let's change the priority now. So this transition priority is 0 and this is 1. Alright, so now you can see it suddenly shifts to this and it doesn't go to this state. So basically that's how this priority works. So the lower the priority, you know, the transition is gonna take place. Alright, so the next options we have is like we have this switch. So basically I think I just discussed all these options in my previous video, but basically at end means basically you complete this complete animation and then you shift to the next, and for that you can actually see these line over here for the transition. And sync is basically, you know, it's tries to sync between two animations so that there is a less flickering. So the last one is at end, so that's we just discussed now. And in advanced mode this is a little interesting. So again let's use these two transitions and let's set the priority to 0. So for an example, that in advanced mode, if let's say this is true and this is false, or it's optional, but let's say this is false. So basically now from these two transitions this transition is gonna take place because it's set to true, even though let's say the priority for this is 0. So now based on the priority, it should go to this animation and it should not play this. But we just set the expression, so basically we can write any piece of code here. So basically a if condition. So let's see, and you can see it directly jumps to this. So this need not to be just true or false. You can write any if condition or any if block over here. So let's say you have some variables. So let's say like you have variable called idle, and this is set to false. And in code, either you change this variable, so not in the ready function but somewhere in your code, and then you just change this value to true, then this state is gonna automatically trigger, because the expression here will be like if your idols is set to true. So if this expression gets true, then the transition is gonna happen. And it's not necessary that the value should be true, it can be anything. Let's say the initial value will be like one integer, and in the code you set it to 2, and here you can just say if the value becomes 2, then you just run this transition, and you can basically write any code, and that should be a single line for sure, and that's gonna trigger this transition. You can also use like get parent and its variable, or let's say the parent variable will be like idle, and if that's equals to 2, so it's not required that you set the variable over here. You can actually have a variable in this parent, so you can even compare it like that. But I hope you get the idea how this expression works. So just a single if statement, and if that's true, then the transition is gonna occur. And in the condition, this is an if statement block that you need to manually say true. For an example, that idle, and the condition you set over here is idle, and here in the state machine you can see the condition we got the idle to be a boolean value where you can actually turn on and off using the code. So basically if there is any option in the parameters, then you can directly use the set of values like this, and you can set the values on and off. So it completely depends on how you create logics. So other than that, you can have n number of logics or n number of conditions that you can trigger on and off based on your states. All right, so the next we have is this mode. So basically auto means it's gonna automatically transition from the start to this animation, and if you set it to enable, then you need to manually say that hey state machine, you need to travel from this point to this point manually. So how do you actually set that? Well, before actually going that, you can see the arrow mark is turned gray, and here it's auto, so it's turned green. And there's one more option that's that says disabled. So disable means the mode is gonna not use that transition. All right, so I'll just quickly show the option of enabled, but other than that yes other than this, we have in the documentation stuff, we have again the same things where you can actually add some advanced conditions, advanced expression, advanced mode to be enabled, disabled, or auto, and all the other stuff. So let's see how you can actually travel from this point to this point when you set the mode to be enabled. So for that, you need to first actually get these transitions. So to get the transition, let's say we will be transitioning from this node to this node. So let's use the enabled option. So if we run our scene now, the animation is not gonna play unless we manually say it to transition from this point to this point. The first thing we do is we get a playback option. So playback basically refers to these transitions. Alright, so this actually returns animation node state machine playback. So basically you can get a few other options that are not actually listed in this let's say animation tree. So basically you can say the get current length. So basically it gets the length of the animation that it's playing, or length of the state machine that it's currently playing the animation. And like you can get the position, you can get the node, the name of the node, and then you can check if it's playing. You can use the next function to actually start the transition. You can even say to start or stop and travel. So let's quickly use the travel option. Alright, so in this we can actually specify the node name. So let's say playback, and then we travel to idle. So now if we run, you can see the animation actually travels to this node. And here let's set it to enable. So now there is no transition between idle to BlendTree, and this node keeps on playing again and again. Even this node finishes its animation, it's gonna stop and it's not gonna go to the next state. So basically you can say it just stopped playing the animation. So if you want to have the next travel, then again you can say animation playback to travel to the next node, and that's BlendTree. So BlendTree, but we need not to travel it immediately. We can say travel at end. So now this slash animation is begin, and then the BlendTree starts playing, and then it suddenly stops because we didn't specify yes, because in this state machine, so here the transition is auto, but in this state machines we have the expression false, and then even we have some weird kind of expressions that's never gonna be triggered. So that's why it goes to typos. And this is just a simple explanation of how you can use these transitions and how you can use the state machines. Well, once you start using the state machine and once you start reading the docs, there are a lot or tons and tons of ways how you can implement the behavior, the logics, and those kinds of stuff. But yeah, this was just a simple video on demonstrating of these playbacks and these state machines and all the other nodes. So that's it for these two long videos. If you have stick till now watching the complete video, then thank you guys for watching the complete video. If you have any questions, you can try to comment. I'll try to solve those questions. And do like the video, do subscribe, do comment, and always have a great day.